Our arts team has put together a short presentation. Please feel free to prompt me if I'm going overbroad, but the literature landscape is so vast, but we've tried to handpick and sort of focus on certain aspects and organizations that we think might be interesting for this collaboration, and also highlight some organizations that we have been working with in the past. We've focused on languages, caste, and ethnicity as our entry point for this presentation, and have uh, done this short presentation to share what we know about the literature landscape of Nepal. Next slide, please. So at a glance, for friends who do not know much about Nepal, we are a small country, but diverse in terms of caste and ethnic groups. We have over 140 different caste and ethnic groups, and 124 different languages are spoken in Nepal, with Khas Bhasa Nepali being the lingua franca. In terms of literature, since the 13th century in the region itself, we have a rich traditional oral literature history that comprises of literature, religious texts, and folklore. And so, coming from that rich history in different languages, we can look at Nepali literature in that sense as well. But modern literature, as we might understand it to be, the contemporary literature, started well after the 20th century in Nepal. But literature has been used as a powerful force for different social political movements in Nepal at different phases. For example, during the Ralpha cultural movement, which is a leftist movement against the autocratic panchayat system in the 1960s. And similarly, a lot of indigenous Newa poets were active in the movement to secure the rights to speak Nepal Bhasa, which is the mother tongue of Newa people. Um, and so we can see how literature has been embedded into the sort of bloodline of the country and its making as we know today. Currently, we can say that how the literature scene functions, especially in terms of capacity building and publishing, is that there's a lot of interest and a lot of initiatives that are led by the development or the funding INGO, NGO sector. Some of the names are Room to Read and Save the Children, but also other organizations. And there's a lot of literature that gets published as either short form or long form publications in daily newspapers, weekly versions of newspapers and magazines, both offline and online as well. And there are also a lot of independent publishers who self-publish, independent and also self-publishing that happens in Nepal. So at a glance, this is our entry point. And now I'm going to share some events, some publishing organizations that are working in publishing, some festivals and events, and some organizations or collectives that are working to build communities or build capacities with literature at the center. Next slide. Publishing. The major publishing language in Nepal is Nepali, but we do have a deep-rooted presence of indigenous and English language publications as well, and small indigenous collectives or independent writers self-publishing their work. So that's very prominent, and there's a wide range of genre for which there, including oral forms, but also text-based forms, and now veering into multimedia or transmedia literature as well. So to talk about a few organizations, I would like to highlight three organizations whose works we know closely. We have a list of organizations that could potentially be our contacts, but for the sake of time, we're just going to focus on three right now. But if you want more information on any of the ones listed, or any other organization in Nepal, please do feel free to get in touch with us. So next slide. So the three organizations in the publishing front are Srijnale. So first, Srijnale is an arts and education organization, but in terms of publishing, it focuses on community-based workshops and outputs that derive from the workshops, and they work with a lot of underrepresented writers and illustrators and editors, and in indigenous languages such as Tharu or Tamang, which is one of the 124 languages spoken in Nepal. Then we have Quixote's Cove, which is a bookshop that also has a publishing imprint, and it promotes diverse youth writers, but also its focus is on multilingual literature. Um, Mostly publishes in English, but different genres from picture books to nonfiction to poetry, and it also publishes the literary magazine Lalit, which is English language magazine. Then we have Nepal Picture Library, which is primarily a digital archive, a digital visual archive, but it also focuses on publications, and their entire work is focused on archiving Nepal's alternative histories. Um, yeah, so these are the three organizations that we would like to highlight in terms of publishing. Now, moving on to festivals and events, we have a lot of festivals and events that happen in terms of literature for, a small space like Nepal. Next slide. Oh, sorry. Festivals and events. So um, the festivals and events happen at a commercial scale as well as a more independent local scale. We also actually have a reality TV show based on poetry called The Poet Idol, which is on its second iteration. But that's more on the commercial side. On the local aspect, we have some festivals that happen in centrally more in our capital, Kathmandu, while other festivals take place outside in the provinces, in other provinces. Next slide, please. So we would like to spotlight three events. The first one, Wow, Women of the World, being a British Council event that we organize with various partners. It is a cultural festival with dedicated literature programming, and we focus on women and gender minority authors, illustrators, and creators. And it happens, this year it's going to happen in Kathmandu in November, but in the past it has traveled to different areas of Nepal as well. So that we also sort of aim to minimize the urban-rural divide and include more diverse voices in arts and literature. Then the second festival is Echoes in the Valley, which is it's primarily a folk music festival, but it also has other art forms included in the festival itself. And we've also partnered with Echoes in the Valley in the past. So Echoes in the Valley happens right in Kathmandu. There's a lot of local level programming and a lot of focus on local, traditional, and indigenous forms of music and art. So that is, they call themselves a movement and not just a festival, and they run programming throughout the year. Then we have Nepal Literature Festival, which you can also see in the photo. It happens in by this lakeside in Pokhara, which is about 8 hours drive away from Kathmandu, and it is the biggest literature festival in Nepal with an international presence. But apart from that, there are many other literature festivals that happen in smaller cities, local towns, and we're also happy to connect organizations or partners if they're interested. We also, in terms of festival and events, there's also a dedicated children's literature festival, or many dedicated children's literature festivals that are organized by schools and different organizations as well. Next slide, please. So, in terms of creating communities and building capacities, I would like to introduce you to certain organizations who have been working either in a either as registered organizations or as collectives to build capacities around literature specifically, and also lead various arts movements. Now, what we've seen is that the process that is currently being followed is that there is a workshop model, and then there is a production of an output, or a mentorship model in which the output is or the artist or the writer is is mentored in the process. And so that is sort of the model that we have observed that these collectives and organizations follow. Next slide, please. So to highlight three organizations, first we have CALO, which is an independent arts organization that has also partnered with British Council, especially for the Queer Arts Project, to support queer authors and artists. And CALO does like art events, but also focuses on workshops around literature, or holds open mics and other events that include that around literature. And yeah, so their special focus is on queer folks and underrepresented communities, especially young people. Then second is Word Warriors. I'm also a part of Word Warriors as a spoken word poet and educator. But so to introduce Word Warriors is a youth-led spoken word poetry collective that has for the last decade been fronting the spoken word poetry movement in Nepal. And Word Warriors is community focused, and also we have Word Warriors has partnered with Women on Stage and British Council. Um, Warriors has partnered with British Council to run a campaign called Women on Stage, where we brought women who had to sort of stop writing or decided to stop writing because of various reasons like household chores or marriages, or because of social barriers, to restart their journey in poetry. So we ran workshops and events around that. So next we have Virangana Comics Collective, which is a women-led comics collective that is a part of British Council's Creating Heroines project. Some of the illustrators are a part of the British Council's Creating Heroines project. And Virangana produces series of comics around different themes, and also works to mentor younger storytellers in comics and graphic storytelling. So these are the three collectives and movements that we wanted to focus on. And in terms of the local small independent organizations that Nick was all talking about, I think when we come to this part, talking about collectives and organizations, I think what Nick was earlier talking about in terms of core not having core funding and the support, I think this is where it resonates most as well. That is the end of my presentation, but if you have any questions, Nuja and I are here now, and we're also happy to be connected via email. We have our email address. You can feel free to write to us at arts@britishcouncil.org.np. Thank you so much.